Bottom Line.
Welcome to the Payments Podcast. I'm Bottom Line Managing Editor Owen McDonald. A troubled economy has banks and businesses in a pinch. Interest rates remain high. Late payments and delinquencies are an issue, so B2B borrowing and lending are getting squeezed. These and other marketplace pressures are making working capital management an urgent priority for banks and businesses. It's not something that can be ignored or delayed, but many companies are ignoring it, or perhaps to say putting it off is more accurate, but that's no longer a viable strategy. To break this topic down, we're delighted to welcome back our friend Mark Brousseau, president of Philadelphia-based consultancy Brousseau & Associates. He's a highly respected industry voice on accounts payable, accounts receivable, payments, document automation, and more. Mark works extensively with the Institute of Finance and Management, among his other professional affiliations. Mark Brousseau, president of Brousseau & Associates, welcome back to the Payments Podcast.
Thanks so much for having me, Owen. Always a pleasure to speak with you.
Always good to see you as well, Mark. Thanks for being here. We're going to dive right in. In this episode, we're discussing 5 ways AP automation supports working capital optimization. It's a mouthful, and it's important. Before we get into those exact specifics, Mark, why is the accounts payable function on so many people's list of where to save these days?
You know, Owen, the focus on improving accounts payable performance when it comes to working capital really started back in the last financial crisis we had. Now, that's way back in 2008. But if you remember back then, corporate America was caught with its proverbial pants down. They simply didn't know where their company stood with its cash and its spending. And that exacerbated the financial credit crisis that we had then. Back then, Owen, CFOs and other finance leaders swore they'd never allow that to happen again. And so they started to take some baby steps toward unlocking the data that flows through their accounts payable departments. They realized, if we could just get at that information that resides in our AP department back then in file cabinets and bankers' boxes, well, maybe then we can better navigate financial uncertainty. That's really when, if you were to trace back the evolution of AP automation, that things started to kick into a higher gear. We've had some fits and starts over the years, but recently, largely caused by the uncertainty caused by the pandemic, once again, finance leaders have cast their eyes on fixing AP once and for all. Now, I know there's some folks listening in when they heard you talk about accounts payable and working capital in the same sentence, probably fell off their treadmills, or maybe their car kind of changed lanes on them, or maybe they tripped while walking their dog. But really, folks, AP can be that lever. And this is a sea change for folks because for years, AP was the quintessential back office function. But today, businesses recognize that if they can optimize the way their AP department works, not just automate it, Owen, now they can unlock all that money that's trapped in inefficient processes. Owen, a recent study showed that businesses have billions, that's billions with a B, of dollars of working capital that's trapped in inefficient accounts payable and accounts receivable processes. The 5 strategies we're going to talk about today, Owen, will be a big step toward unlocking that capital.
Absolutely. And we're going to get into those specifics. When we spoke previously, you noted that AP automation offers enhanced visibility into cash flow and corporate spending. That's so critical now. You just mentioned it, certainly for controlling working capital. Mark, why does AP automation do this better than any of the alternatives as you see it?
Yeah, well, we really are a big conduit to the company's cash flows and spending. And it's been an under-leveraged tool in the arsenal that CFOs have at their disposal. The CFO's role is changing, Owen. This has been well documented. Today, CFOs are being asked to be more of a strategist than a steward, and certainly much more than a scorekeeper. And that is going to require them to use all of the tools at their disposal. AP is key here. Let's start with the simple working capital mechanism that we have in accounts payable. And that is overhead. If we can reduce the costs of processing invoices and paying suppliers, that's going to free up a tremendous amount of cash that the business can use to reinvest in the business for strategic initiatives, or maybe in economic uncertainty, it could be a buffer against the possibility of an economic slowdown or flat revenues. And make no mistake about it, Owen, AP is the most expensive and inefficient finance and administration function. Today, if you process an invoice manually, it's probably costing you anywhere from $8 to $15 per invoice. And that's assuming you don't have an exception. If you're paying your supplier with a paper check, well, now we're talking about somewhere between $6 and $11 according to analyst firms. If you electronify those processes, however, you can do it for a small fraction of that. And that's money that can go right back into the business and can give you some peace of mind depending on what the economy does.
That's great, Mark. For me, I'd like to start with one of my favorites, one of everyone's favorites, if you're in the AP business. Days payable outstanding, DPO. It's a metric that all AP teams rightly obsess over. You've spoken about rationalizing DPO, quote unquote. Explain that, Mark, and then maybe just rattle off the 5 so that if you feel like doing it in that order.
Yeah, Owen, we don't tend to think about AP as a lever for rationalizing our organization's DPO, but it's a tremendous tool. In many cases, the problem has been that we've been so focused on just trying to pay our suppliers on time that we never really gave much thought to how we were paying our suppliers. Well, now that we've started to migrate away from paper checks and inefficient invoice approval processes, this is opening up the opportunity for us to optimize the way we pay our suppliers. So now we might be paying them via ACH, perhaps ACH Plus with rich remittance data. Maybe we're using a virtual card. Maybe in some cases we're still using a check. What we need to do as organizations is to find ways to rationalize the terms associated with those different payment methods. So the more desirable the payment method to us, the better the terms we should be willing to extend to our suppliers. So for instance, if you're willing to accept a virtual card payment, you know what? I'll pay you tomorrow. If you're willing to accept an ACH payment, maybe it'll be 22 days. If you're insisting on getting a paper check, well, now I'm going to pay you in 60 days. If you can align your payment terms with the different types of payment methods we're using, now we're going to instantly be able to access some improvements in DPO. And that's to say nothing of some of the improvements you can get by using certain virtual card payment models that allow us, much like consumers, to have some additional float. As compelling as that is, Owen, that's only the first mechanism that we have when it comes to unlocking working capital using AP automation. The second, we just referred to a few moments ago. It's reducing our overhead and freeing up cash in our operations that can be reinvested into the business. The third is being able to capture more early payment discounts. Oh, and I don't know if you know this, but 80%, and that's 80%, of all suppliers are willing to exchange a discount on the invoice due amount for an earlier payment. They have cash flow pressures too. And if you talk to AR folks these days, those pressures are rising. In many cases, however, our AP processes are so inefficient, takes so long to approve an invoice, we've just slammed the window shut on any opportunities to capture those early payment discounts. If we're able to accelerate our invoice approvals, that's going to open up not only the ability to capture those discounts that we might have missed in the past, but to dynamically go back to suppliers and say, hey, I've got this invoice processed, and I know you don't ordinarily offer me a discount. Would you be willing to do it in this case? And what you're going to find is in many cases, they're going to say yes. Right. And this is going to allow you to potentially reduce your costs of goods purchased and free up more working capital. Additionally, Owen, once we've automated our invoice to pay process, this is going to provide us with tremendous visibility into our cash flows, our corporate spending, and our operational performance. And this really starts pushing our working capital improvements. Once we have visibility into what's happening with our cash flows, now we're able to better predict where our bumps in the road might be, to better
Right.
manage our money, to make sure we're not sitting on excess cash because we simply don't know what our obligations are. What's more, we can use tools like artificial intelligence to go back and look at vast amounts of historical invoice data to tell us exactly where it is that we can expect to have different obligations come in. What's more, it can predict potential shortfalls so we could adjust our cash accordingly. We can do the same thing with spending. We can know exactly which departments are likely to make big expenditures at which time of the year so we can keep things in alignment. This is critical for CFOs, especially in times like this where there's some questions about revenue growth in the quarters ahead, or at times when interest rates are starting to change. But there's one other tool that AP automation opens up to organizations as well, and that's cash back rebates on qualifying payments. Different models, you can earn rebates on things like card payments or maybe even ACH plus payments. And those are rebates that, once again, you can put back into your business to invest in strategic activities. We hear a lot about transforming accounts payable into a profit center. And when I talk to a lot of AP leaders about this, they tend to roll their eyes like, really? But the fact is that in many cases, if you're able to have a partner who can do a strong job of enabling your suppliers to accept these advantageous payment types, not only can you offset the cost of your AP department's overhead, now you're also able to return money back to the business.
Wow. So the AP automation is gaining ground for its ability to take advantage of early payment discounts, last minute on time payments that boost liquidity, and cashback rebates on qualifying payments. And of course, Mark, that's all gravy for the working capital pool. Yet, by some estimates, only about 10% of AP departments were fully automated at the end of 2023, less than a year ago. Mark, what's holding back the holdouts? What do they need to understand?
Yeah, and really in many cases, it's not that the AP folks don't see the need, it's that they have had trouble translating it into action by senior management. So if you talk to AP leaders, what they'll tell you is there's typically a few barriers to automation. One, they say a lack of capital resources. We simply don't have the money for automation. And in uncertain economic times like these, it might be tempting to think, well, hey, we should be hoarding cash. We shouldn't be investing it in automation. I'll come back to that in just a second. The second thing is often a lack of IT resources. Oh my goodness, this sounds complicated, and IT has got this big ERP project going on, or maybe some sort of a digital transformation initiative in the enterprise. Will we be able to get the attention we need to deploy one of these solutions? And the third is a concern about hitting home. We don't have the departmental resources to support this. Here's the thing, though, Owen. At the end of the day, the solutions that are available today for invoice to pay automation are typically cloud based. They go in fast. They don't disrupt existing processes. We can train our staff without them ever having to come into the office. And they integrate seamlessly with our existing ERP. And what this all means is that they cost a lot less than traditional AP automation solutions. They don't require a lot of IT resources, and it doesn't require a big change management lift on the part of our teams.
Right.
But I think the biggest barrier that many organizations have, the biggest thing that's holding them back, is they simply haven't been able to make a compelling case to senior management on why it is they must automate. And this is your point. And here's what the message I want to leave folks with today is that working capital is critical to the CFO. It's critical to treasurers. A recent study by the Cash Management Leadership Institute, CMLI, they found that more treasurers are focused on AP automation. And the reason for that is they recognize these working capital improvements we've been talking about today. And so what you want to do as an AP leader is go to CFO, go to your treasurer, go to your finance leaders and say, hey, I know times are uncertain. I've got a way that we can improve our working capital. Through AP automation, we can reduce our overhead. We could get better visibility in our cash flows and spending. We could capture more early payment discounts. We're going to be able to unlock cashback rebates on qualifying spend, and we're going to be able to rationalize our DPO. And you know what? I think in many cases, senior management's going to say, where do I sign up?
There it is, folks. Everything we've just touched on is a milestone toward the goal of having AP automation support working capital optimization. Some AP costs are simply a waste of capital at this point. Optimizing payments taps in. Don't overthink it. Many thanks to our friend and guest, Mark Brousseau, president of Brousseau and Associates. To our fantastic audience, thanks for listening. Hit subscribe. Catch us again on your favorite podcast platforms, including Apple, SoundCloud, and Spotify. Bye for now.
The Payments Podcast from Bottom Line.